Hey everyone, welcome back to All Tony Farms, and today we're going to be getting into a new video. And before we get into the video, please go on and click the thumbs up button, subscribe to the channel if you're new here. Let's go on into the video. Well, good evening, everyone. Welcome back to another Wildwoods Beekeeping Chat. Appreciate y'all so much for joining in tonight. And tonight's topic, we're going to be talking about what really limits honey production. But on y'all's way in, make sure y'all smash that thumbs up button and subscribe to the channel if you're new here. I greatly appreciate it. I know many of y'all will probably be watching on a replay, so if you are, appreciate you very much. You can always skip ahead and get into the good stuff, the presentation and the topic tonight. But before we get into the topic tonight, the presentation, like I do mostly every night I do the live stream, you will just to kind of welcome everybody in, give some people some time to join in. Because usually early on people are just joining in, and I don't really like to rush into it. But anyway, I appreciate everybody joining in today. Not many updates going on around here. It's been pretty much the same all of last week to today. The nectar flow, I've been mentioning it a lot lately. It is still slow, not the best, but it is going. I mean, there is a nectar flow. Nectar is coming in the hive. Honey is being made. Comb is being drawn out. But the fastness, should I say, the how fast they get it done is rather slow. And that tells me that we have a nectar flow, but it's just not a very good one. Our privet flow this year was much better. They did it. They drew out foundation great, frames great, filled up supers great, and so far the tallow flow hasn't met that. At least from what I've observed, because they're the same colonies, they're still as strong as they were. It's just fortunately the tallow flow is just not as good so far, and that might be due to some of the rain. Dennis was mentioning that early on before anybody even was joining in. He was saying this rain is going to put an end to our nectar flow because it's supposed to rain all week. And that's been the case. It's been raining a lot around here. Now, good thing is the past, I don't know, maybe, before today, the past week, maybe week and a half, it has not been raining, which is a good thing. But it's just been, before that, we had a lot of rain. So it's, this whole week here as well, it's going to be raining. So it can hurt the flow. And that's actually going to be part of the topic tonight. We're going to be talking about what limits honey production and whether rain does limit how much honey you make. Not just how much honey you make, but also, how quicker bees will strengthen, get strong, draw foundation, and various other things that we rely on. Especially if you're a commercial beekeeper who's relying on bees, who's to make a living, that can definitely affect you. But that's the topic tonight, to get a better understanding for especially new beekeepers and even some beekeepers in here who are experienced. I know many of y'all know what we're going to be talking about. A lot of the things and that a lot of the stuff we're going to be talking about is experience. Depending on how much experience you have, and then the more experience you have, the better you'll understand different things, whether it be the flow, honey production, timing, and various things. the how much experience you have really helps you. But anyway, what was I talking about? I was talking about updates around here. That's pretty much it. We do got an nectar flow going. I've been checking some bees. The bees are looking good. They look the same. They've been looking. Here soon we'll be in our dearth once the tallow flow ends, and the tallow is blooming right now. I know for sure it is because I've been looking around for tallow, and tallow is out there. It's blooming, and it looks fine. It's just kind of slow. But I know many people are probably wondering if I'm going to get a honey harvest this year, and I'm not really 100. I know I'm going to get a honey harvest this year. It's just not probably going to be as good of a harvest as I probably would have thought, especially during the privet flow, because the privet flow is really good. Our supers got um, packed up pretty quick, and foundation frames. I had a box. I put on like a deep box, 10 frames, and put on on a hive, and in that privet flow, they drew it out in 4 days, and I think that has something to do with the frames, because I do like Premier Bee Products frame. That's those frames. That's where I get the frames at. But I do think it has a little bit to do with how good that flow was, and I was pretty happy with it. But unfortunately, right now we're not in that good of a flow. But it is better than nothing, because right now we do have a flow. I mean, I keep on thinking to myself that I wish it was a better flow. It's kind of frustrating that it is kind of slow right now. But it is better than nothing that we have a nectar flow coming in, and the bees are building up, so it's enough for them to build up, just not enough to for excess, right? They will draw out what they need, but it seems like certain colonies are just not wanting to draw out because they have what they need and they don't really need any more, and that's a lot to do with a nectar flow, how good your nectar flow is, and that's kind of goes into what we're talking about tonight. But anyway, I want to welcome everybody in. I see we have Dennis. He got in here first. Jacob, Country Road Beast. Thanks for checking in, Jacob. Good to see you. Mike Tangway, a little subscriber who always is in the chats every night. I appreciate you very much for joining in tonight. Good to see you. Tim and Hannah, another little subscribers who always watches the live streams and videos, and always see y'all's comment. Always a great to see y'all, and appreciate y'all being here. I see Richard, Bee Collector Rick. He's always in here as well. Thanks for the support and being here. Great to see you as well. And I'm sure more people will be joining in as well. See Chris Wright. I think that's a new name I'm just seeing. Good to see you. Thanks for checking in. And he was saying it's not all on your nectar flow for producing honey. You've got to have the right age of field. Force bees stuff in there when those flowers open. The bee needs to be at least 21 days old. That is true. And that's some things that we're going to be talking about. It's not always your nectar flow. It can be how strong your colony is. It can be and we'll be talking about it in the presentation, so I'm not going to try to talk about it all right now. But Chris is right. There are a lot of various things that can limit your honey, how much honey you produce, the bees produce. But anyway, I'm gonna go ahead and get into the topic tonight, or the presentation, like I do every night. Is y'all know the kind of how I always do it. Do the slideshow. Gonna pop it up on the screen. It says Tim and Hannah says same happening here. About half are drawing out and others real sluggish. Same here. That is the exact same thing. I have some colonies that are drawing out. They're looking good, and others are just not even touching it. It's just very inconsistent. And that could also be a lot to do, like I just mentioned, it to do with some of the bees just not being not really strong, like unhealthy, but just not big enough where they are going to really want to draw anything out and produce honey. They might be content where they are, and that does happen a lot. Oh, I didn't mean to do that. Okay, there we go. But anyway, let's go and get into tonight's topic. And again, we're going to be talking about honey production. And every year, if you're a new beekeeper, we always have nectar flows, whether it be a spring flow. Some people even, we have a dearth down here. Usually down here in Alabama, it's from early July, late June, maybe up until late August to early September. That's our dearth. That means we don't have much of a nectar flow going on at all. It's a very frustrating time, especially as a beekeeper, because nothing's happening. A lot of times you'll see more bad than good. Now, luckily, the past 2 years of my experience during the dearth, it really wasn't that bad. I didn't have anything bad. I really didn't have anything good. It was just really a flat line. And I mentioned that last week as well, that it's like watching the end. If you're a YouTuber or a beekeeper who uploads videos, you know what I'm talking about. Whenever your video ends, the algorithm pushing it out, it flatlines. Well, throughout the dearth, that was pretty much the last 2 years. That's kind of how my summers have been. It's just been a flat line. And right now, we're kind of looking towards that again as well, from the looks of it. Because right now, we are on that incline to the dearth, and it's going to be here very, very soon. Luckily, we still have a flow going. Like I said, it's been slow. But anyway, this is a very important topic because a lot of people right now, especially going to the dearth, and even during spring, probably wonder why their colony is not making honey. And this happens to a lot of new beekeepers, and they might ultimately assume that there is something wrong with the colony, there's something wrong with the queen, which there always can be, but they never dive deeper. And a lot of these things also go into hands-on experience. I always talk about that. Hands-on experience is the best thing a beekeeper can have, and if you don't have that, then you really don't have a really know much about timing, flows, the exact time when flows start, and that can be unpredictable, but just a kind of a base on kind of where you might think, where it kind of starts. And I've mentioned that a lot of times before as well. But anyway, let's go ahead and talk about what really limits honey production. And there's a lot of different things that can vary into this. Anyway, tonight what we're going to be talking about is why some colonies produce more honey than others, the biggest factors limiting honey crops, and what beekeepers can do to improve honey production. That's what we're going to be talking about. But let's talk about what does it take to make honey. So honey production depends on multiple things. It does not just depend on available nectar. It depends on strong populations, because you need a strong population to draw out supers to make honey, to fill up those supers. You need healthy bees. If you have an unhealthy colony, the last thing they're going to do is focus on making extra honey. And that's the thing about adding supers and stuff. That's really extra honey, because we're making sure they have enough honey in the double deep or the single deep. That's usually enough honey. But what we want is them to make excess honey. So for them to make excess honey, we need them to be very strong and healthy. So a unhealthy colony is not going to be making excess honey. They're going to be focusing on trying to expand and grow in, the situations that they may be in, whether it be varromites, stress. They're going to be trying to eliminate that. It could be, small hive beetles, you name it, many different pests and predators out there that are after bees, and they'll be focusing on that stress factors rather than excess honey, because that's kind of what we try to do is when adding supers is excess honey. And the bees will still use it if you leave it on, but most times you'll see it being untouched, especially down south whenever you don't have as bad winters. But it still can be touched. We've talked a lot about that before, where in winters you have up and down temperatures. The temperatures get up into the 60s and the bees start flying. That's a problem that we can talk about in a different video when we get closer to winter. I do that every year. Also, a productive queen is another factor. Nectar flows is the biggest one, and nectar flow is really important. If you have a bad nectar flow, you're not going to make that much honey. But if you have a pretty good, sufficient flow, you're going to make more honey. Weather is another factor into honey production. We were talking about that earlier, just in the chat. Dennis, he's another beekeeper down here in Alabama. I can't remember exactly where he's located in Alabama, but he's pretty nearby. But anyway, he was kind of talking about how it's raining there in our area, that can hurt honey, and that's weather. Weather can factor into how much money you make or how much you don't. So weather is another factor, and management, proper management, whether it be treating your bees for mites, also swarm control, because if you don't control swarms, that's the main thing about why beekeepers want to control swarms is honey production, and you're just going to lose half of your colony. That's a lot of reason why beekeepers want to do that. And a lot of people will do is a splitting technique, which is called the Damari method. Now, I'm not going to talk about it tonight. I've been mentioning multiple times. I'm going to dive deeper into it into a different video, but I'm not going to do that tonight. But You can watch some videos on another channel. They'll tell you all about it. Probably go better in deeper into that subject about how to do it and kind of what it does. But that's what a lot of beekeepers will do. That's a good way to prevent swarms and make more honey. All right, now since we kind of got that out of the way, let's kind of talk about OSC. Dennis says Montgomery. He's not that far off from me. I'm down here in near Troy. So let's talk about some factors now. So factor number one is colony population. Like we talked about earlier, a colony needs plenty of nurse bees, plenty of foragers, because foragers are the ones that are going to be going out there and collecting nectar, and a large workforce before the flow begins. So weak colonies rarely produce surplus honey, and like we talked about earlier, that weak colonies aren't going to be focusing on making excess honey. They're going to be focusing on the what's causing them to be stressed out or weak. And I talked about that a little bit last week about stressed colonies, about opening them too much. I sometimes do that myself, especially inspecting your bees. If you inspect them too much, stress them out, then you're just kind of going to be breaking into the colony, disturbing them too much, and they're not going to be able to get as much work done as they could if you didn't open them as much. So around this time, especially during the honey flow, it's a good idea to probably lower your inspections to about at least once a week. I would say once every 2 weeks would be a good idea to avoid disturbing your colony, and that's going to prevent your bees being stressed out. And they can be stressed out with you opening your colony too much, inspecting them like every couple of days or so. I used to do that, and the main reason why I used to do that was because I wanted to make sure everything was good. I was very, very curious on what was going on, and that just really didn't do good. And I really noticed that it really slowed them down. So make sure you give them some time to close up. Make sure you don't, inspect them every couple of days. That's kind of a little mistake that I made a couple years ago, and I've tried to be a little bit more intentional with my bees. I talked a lot about that as well before. But anyway, those are some things that a colony needs. Again, you want to make sure your colonies are healthy and strong. A lot of times what beekeepers will do before the flow is feed them to strengthen them up. Treat your bees as well before the flow. A lot of people, beekeepers will do that. And the reason why I say a lot of beekeepers will do that is because beekeeping, most of the methods are really depending on the beekeeper. So I don't really try to say that a beekeeper does this or a beekeeper does that. Beekeepers do a whole bunch of different things. There's many different answers to one question is what I usually always say. But anyway, those are some things a colony needs: a good population to make honey. Surplus honey. Let's go into factor number 2, queen quality. And a good queen, a productive queen, provides a consistent brood pattern, large populations, and stability in the colony. So some signs of queen problems can be spotty brood, poor population growth, frequent queen replacement. So to avoid having problems with your queens, especially in spring, what a lot of beekeepers will do will replace their queen every year, and you can do that as well. Replace their queen every year or every 2 years or whatever. I know many commercial beekeepers, Bob Beanie, I think, is one. I can't remember. I've talked with a whole bunch of beekeepers on chats and stuff. It's kind of where I get a lot of the knowledge of kind of whatever people do, could just get an idea of kind of how they run their apiary, because it's always interesting to hear other people, how they do things, and it's good knowledge. But I know Bob Benny replaces his queens every year. And that is a good thing to improve your queen quality every year. I don't do that, and that's just a me thing. I don't have nothing against replacing my queens every year. It's just I always will check colonies, make sure they don't have spotty brood patterns, make sure populations are good, and a lot of times I'll find that if there is a queen problem, the bees are on it before I am. If I go into a colony, I look at a brood pattern, I'm like, this ain't really good. They are already killed her and replacing her, superseding her. And a example of that is I had a colony recently, I think last season. Yeah, it was last season. I'm just I can't really keep up track with every single colony. I'm up to 22, by the way. Right now, they're all still doing well. And last year, the original queen, she was about 3 to 4 years old, and she was looking fine, the brood pattern, but I could definitely tell a drop off in production. But it was in middle of spring, and I just kind of asked some beekeepers what, just kind of out of curiosity, what they would do. And most people said just to keep her and see kind of what she did. And that's kind of what I ended up doing, just to kind of see what they would do. Because I knew the queen wasn't really all that good, but I just want to I kept her in there just kind of see what they would do. And about a week after that, maybe 2 weeks, they superseded her, and the new queen is much better. She's looking good. That colony is doing well, and they'll do it themselves. But it is a good idea to replace every year, especially if you're wanting good honey production every year. But anyway, let's go on to number 3, and this is probably the biggest factor into what limits honey production, and that is nectar availability, how good your nectar flow is. So you can have strong colonies, double deeps with a super, no matter how strong they are. If you don't have a good nectar flow, they're not going to make any more honey. They're just going to stay the same most times, or just dwindle. So during that time, that's why you have to treat your bees for mites, because that time of year they're not really able to. Well, they are able to grow. They do. There is brood produced during that time, during the dearth, and but it's just not as much. It's much slower, at least from what I've seen in my apiary, and that's why you'll have to treat your bees for mites, because the mite loads will be going up, while most times your bee load will be going down. So that's what I found right now is my main issue right now is mites, and I already had 2 colonies had that issue. Treating them, they're looking much better. But anyway, here are some factors affecting nectar flow, nectar flow, and that's local forage, rainfall, a drought, a dearth, and bloom timing. So whenever you have no nectar flow, no nectar out there for the bees, you won't get much honey. Now, again, like I said, in my area, I try to go off what I've experienced, and it could be different for other folks. But for me, whenever we are in a dearth, you could put on a super, or checkerboard, whatever. They're just not going to touch those frames, and the reason for that is there's just not enough nectar. Again, like I said earlier, I already mentioned it, but just in case if somebody wasn't in here when I mentioned it, the bees, whenever you're trying to add supers, add another box. You want them strong, and you need nectar flow for them to draw it out. And if they don't have no nectar, they're just not going to draw it out, because they need nectar to make comb and honey. But anyway, a nectar flow is another factor that you have to take into consideration. So a good idea would be to learn bloom timing. So it could be different in different areas. And in my area, just because you're in the same state doesn't mean it's going to be the same. I know many people who are a little bit more north or a little bit more south, and their timing of the same flower or tree is much different. So I'm going to kind of talk about mine. Y'all can talk about what y'all's timing for blooms or whatever it is. But mine is usually in late March, early April. Our privet will start to bloom. It's a very good source of nectar. Then usually whenever it will end in about 2 weeks, so it only lasts till maybe May, and then usually mid to late May, sometimes early June as well, our tallow flow will start. And usually the tallow flow is always early summer, so it will go from late May, early June to late June to maybe, if you're lucky, early July. And last year, I think it pretty much started in late May and ended late June. So right whenever the tallow flow ended, you could just tell a sudden lack of production, whether it be honey, the comb building, whatever it is, a very good drop off. But anyway, let's go ahead and go to the 4th factor, colony health. Now, if you have a weak colony, they're not going to be focusing on drawing out comb. They're not going to be focusing on making surplus honey. They'll be focusing on rebuilding their hive, because they're weak. They know when they're weak and when they're stressed out, and whenever they have a lot of issues, and it could be multiple issues stacked over, whether it be varroa mites, some viruses as well, and maybe mixed in with the dearth, it can really stress your bees out, and they're not going to be focusing on doing anything else other than recovering from what they're dealing with. But some major health issues can include varroa mites, the viruses they carry, We know many. We don't know all of the viruses, but we know many of them. The deformed wing virus is one of those viruses, and you can definitely tell their wings are deformed. I recently had a colony where I went into them, and they had a spotty brood pattern. They looked very unhealthy. They looked very weak. They were only on about 3 frames of bees. Three frames. The bees were on those 3 frames, and I could tell from the top of the hive, just looking down, that they weren't really healthy. They were very weak. So when I checked them, kind of, diagnosing them, it to me seemed like it was parasitic mite syndrome, a high load of mites. And one thing I noticed on the bees, because I was looking at the adult bees and the young bees as well, and I noticed on many of those bees, they had deformed wings. So right then it told me, well, this colony has a very high load of mites. So what I did was I treated them, and they're still being treated right now. And I'm trying Roxanne, so you newer treatment, seeing kind of how it worked. But anyway, healthy colonies gather more nectar and raise more brood, so therefore they're a healthier and more strong colony. All right, so the fifth factor can be hive congestion. So you may be wondering, well, isn't this what we want? We want a congested hive. We want them packed full, and that's a good thing to have. But some issues you can have is honey-bound brood nests. That issue is like a very big issue, especially during a nectar flow. If your nectar flow is booming and your colony is doing well and they're bringing in a lot of nectar, a lot of times whenever the brood emerges, they'll immediately backfill it with nectar before the queen has a chance to go back and lay. So you'll start seeing the brood nest full of honey, and people wonder, what should I do? And we'll talk about that in just a second, what you should do. But that is a very big issue. You also have lack of super space. And the main issue to me whenever we're talking about congestion is swarming. So whenever you have a congested hive, maybe you should have went ahead and added a super or two on them. They already made swarm cells. So you're going to have to deal with swarming instead of focusing on honey. So that's the main thing when we're talking about hive congestion. But you still want your colony packed. So don't think that, we need our colonies not packed. You do want them packed, but you want to make sure you add supers before they get too packed. And again, if a colony wants to swarm, they're going to swarm. So in that case, you're probably going to have to, if you're focusing on honey, you're probably going to do the Damari method. It's a way that you can make splits while you're still going to make a lot of honey. Again, I'll go deeper into that in a different live stream. Probably be a good topic, but you probably can go on YouTube and search up some videos, and people have many videos out there, and you can learn from them and figure out what it is, the method. So the sixth factor, the limiting factor that we have here, is timing. So I think somebody else mentioned this just a little bit ago about forager bees. You want to have a lot of forager bees. I can't remember who mentioned that in the chat, but this is kind of another thing, pretty much what they were saying. But colonies must peak at the right time. So if right now, whenever you're going into your nectar flow, they're not strong, they're not timed well, then they're not going to make much honey. So some questions to consider is, are populations building early enough? Are supers added before the flow? That's a good thing to do. Before the flow starts, add your supers. I've had some issues myself doing that. Sometimes I'm late, and I'll mention kind of what happened with me on that, but that's something that I've done and learned the hard way, that it can drastically lower how much honey you'll make. And also, is brood production occurring at the right time? So let's go back to add supers before the flow. This year, I really didn't take advantage of the flow really that good, because the main thing was, at the time, I didn't have super frames. So at that time, I went ahead and ordered frames, but they didn't arrive until a week after I bought them, and I had to fix some frames or whatever that I had and kind of get it all into working order. So before they were all ready, it was probably about 2 weeks. So our privet flow ended. So then I was kind of thinking that, maybe our tallow flow will be fine. We'll get honey off of that. So far, not all that great. So we're kind of starting to kind of see where it might have been good to have been ready before the flow even started, and captured all of the privet flow. See, that's something that I have went through this year, that last year kind of as well. And my plan, and I'm going to talk about it into a different video, but I've been thinking about it past couple of weeks that I'm going to be a little bit more prepared for spring for next year. And what I'm gonna do is buy a whole bunch of super frames, boxes, or make my boxes because I make my own equipment. I'll make my own equipment, make sure I have boxes, top covers, bottom boards, make sure I have all the supers ready. So then right before the flow, I'm going to go ahead and add those boxes so I don't get too late. And again, that's something that I messed up on timing. I didn't time it right, and that did kind of hurt me um, with my honey because the supers I did add, they were drawn out very, very quickly and stored honey at a very short time. So just to think, I'm thinking right now that if I would have, you know, timed that better, I would have made a lot more honey than I have right now. So it's just something to think about and try to and that does come with experience and sometimes even if you are a experienced beekeeper, sometimes you might mess up on timing by a week, and sometimes that can hurt you in the long run. All right, this is one that we were talking about earlier with another viewer, Dennis. He'll start talking about it. He's in over there in the Montgomery area, and we're kind of talking about rain, and it's been raining today, and it's supposed to rain all week, so that's kind of hurt the flow. Like I said, our flow ain't really even that good, but we need the flow. I mean, before the tallow flow started and the privet flow, we were kind of in a mini drought. It was really nothing much coming in, and our tallow flow started. Nectar flow is coming in, just very slow and very inconsistent. And it seems like a lot of beekeepers are experiencing the same thing. This season has been a tough season for many beekeepers. I was watching a video from Bracken, and Bracken may be in here, he might not be. It seems like anytime I talk about a beekeeper, they always come in, so he might show up. But I did see a video of Bracken talking about his season and how it's been pretty rough for him, and I hate to see that for him because I always hate to see tough seasons for other folks who are keeping bees. But down here it's not been that smooth. It has not been that great. I will say it's not the worst that I've seen. It's much better than some of the worst things I've seen, but it sure isn't the best. But anyway, the seventh limiting factor I do want to kind of talk about is weather. And the thing is, this can be kind of frustrating for many beekeepers, is you cannot control the weather. You can control timing. You can control the population of your bees. You can make sure you kill your mites. Make sure you feed your bees early on if you want to build them up. You can build your bees up, but you cannot manage weather. So the weather will affect your nectar flow, your nectar secretion, bee flight, and bloom duration. So some examples is excessive rain, high winds, and that's one thing I was talking about Bracken. He was experiencing that as well. High winds, extreme heat, and a drought. And here soon we'll be in our drought, and that's going to be not going to be fun. But like I said, past couple of years haven't been that bad. It's just been nothing really. It's really what it's been, is nothing going on. But so this is our weather. I might as well go ahead and go through our weather while we're here. And as you can see, the whole week, what is it? 50% chance of rain, 70% chance of rain, 60, 50, 50. See, that right there is just terrible for a nectar flow if you want to have a good one. And not just the nectar itself, the secretion of the nectar. It can also, the bee flight, how much they can go out and forage the nectar. They won't be able to if it's raining. So again, it's been hot down here, but it's been muggy. I think one of the worst things about Alabama heat is the intense humidity. And again, as you can see, the highs aren't all that bad compared to some other states. You'll see a lot of times, they'll be in the mid hundreds, 105, 104. Sometimes we'll reach that every once in a while, but so far it's not been all that bad when we look at the temperatures, 86, 80, 85, 87, 86, 87, 92. It's just been the humidity, and that is just what's been making our summers always bad and miserable. most folks, I do want to hear kind of what y'all's humidity is, but I know many folks have lower humidity, especially out west. They have a dry heat. From what I hear from other folks, I'm not 100% sure on that, so don't quote me on that. But if you are out west in Texas or Oklahoma or any other state out west or even up north, let me kind of know how your humidity is, kind of how your summers go. I'm always open to kind of hear kind of what's going on in your area. Helps me whenever I'm doing these presentations to have an accurate view of other states and other locations. All right, so the eighth factor is genetics, and this doesn't really factor all that much, but it can a little bit. And the thing is, I notice a lot with my bees, and I'm sure y'all do too, is that certain colonies are great honey producers. Some are great wax producers, good at building wax. Some are good at other things. Some naturally build faster. Some forage harder. Some produce more honey than others. Some produce less, but are a little bit more efficient. And a kind of prime example of that is Italians versus Russians. And the main thing you'll see is Italians don't. I wouldn't say don't. They can, but just not as good as Russians. They just don't. They don't really manage their honey as well as Russians do, from what I've seen. So if you're producing honey, many folks prefer Russians, and I do want to hear y'all's opinion. Open ears. Feel free to chat. Again, if you're a beekeeper, feel free to open your opinions in the chat. Always good to hear from other people to kind of see kind of what they think and kind of what their opinions are, and kind of want to hear kind of what genetics you like better for honey production or other things you try to accomplish. But again, genetics do help, but management still matters. So don't think that, just because I have a Russian, that we can just forget about management. We can forget that they're strong. We can forget all these other things and just lay it all on genetics. And we can't really do that. We can focus on genetics a little bit, but also focus on some other things that will, all in all, help your bees make surplus honey. We've already gone for 37 minutes. That's crazy. It always goes by pretty fast with these presentations. So the ninth factor we're going to be kind of talking about, I want to talk about. I see we have 23 people in here tonight. Appreciate y'all so much for joining in. If y'all will, don't forget, make sure to smash that thumbs up button on your way in. That always helps me out and pushes these videos out to more people. I greatly appreciate y'all. Okay, this is the last factor. Number 9 is the management of a beekeeper, and this is really important. So management decisions affect production. So whether it be swarm prevention, mite control, timely inspections, not too much or not too little, providing space at the right time, and proper feeding, especially whenever you're not in a nectar flow, especially if it needs to be fed. And if you don't control mites, if you inspect your bees too much, that is going to heavily impact your bees. Now, one of these things might not, kill a colony, but all of them together will really reduce your honey production. And you're definitely going to, especially if you're a beekeeper who relies on honey and other things that bees make and do, you're going to be heavily affected by mismanaging things, whether it be, like we just talked about, swarm prevention, inspections, controlling mites, controlling beetles. Even though beetles won't kill a colony, they will still stress a colony out, and if they're dealing with multiple things, they're just not going to make surplus honey. But again, good management helps colonies reach their potential. And that's kind of what I always focus on whenever we're doing these presentations. But again, thanks for watching the presentation. We're not done with the chat, but we are done with the presentation part of it. But anyway, I'm going to go through the chat real quick and see kind of what everybody was talking about. I see Jessica, Mike, Keith, Chris, he was in here earlier, Dave, DC's Bees. Good evening, everyone. Finally getting some rain in Virginia. I got to add another honey super this past weekend, keeping hope for our clover flow. Yep, right now our flow is okay. I mean, I mentioned it all night, so I'm sure y'all probably tired of me saying it, but it's been kind of slow. If your hive has a high mite, I think Chris. Oh yeah, I was about to say mite population. Mite population. No matter how many bees are in there, the honey production will be sacrificed. That is very very true. Your your master honey making when you can batches to your nectar flow opens. That's the key right age of bees soon as flower opens. That's right. That's the comment I was looking for. The swarm I caught decided to supersede their queen. The queen has a beautiful laying pattern. They should build up nicely before winter. That's good to hear. 9 pounds of nectar equals 1 pound of wax. That is a good thing to always remember, that it takes a lot of nectar to make 1 pound of wax. So again, if you don't have that good of a nectar flow, they're just not going to make that much. Dennis, we're going to work on some splits in hopes of some fine summer sauce queens. We really want to pack out the horizontal hives again. I remember they used to have some horizontal hives. I've wanted to get a horizontal hive, but I just haven't got around to it. Maybe sometime I will though. It might be a good, experiment. Just kind of have one out there. Just going through the comments, y'all. I'm going through the past ones. Very good, very nice presentation tonight, Grayson. Keep up the great work. Thanks for watching, Jessica. I appreciate you joining in tonight. The drought this spring in Virginia has been awful. My county has been under a complete burn ban for 2 months now. I'm not even supposed to use a smoker when inspecting my bees. Down here, I don't really use a smoker much either, and many people have asked me why you don't use a smoker, and I always tell them that honestly, there's really no reason why I don't. I just have gotten to the point where anytime I go out to the bee yard, my routine is to put on my suit, get my hive tool, my gloves, and go straight out to the bee yard. My routine, my routine was to light the smoker up, and then put on the suit or whatever. But I just haven't kind of got away from that and just don't use a smoker as much. Probably should though. It probably would help out a lot. I just always forget about it. Anytime before I'm going to go out to the bee yard, I always tell myself, okay, Grayson, remember, light the smoker before you go out there. And I end up out there inspecting bees without even lighting it. And I remind myself later, I'm like, nah, I'm not going to waste time to go over there. Just keep inspecting. Thanks, Jacob. Appreciate you watching it. Try to help people out. And, always the presentations aren't, I always do research and stuff, but a lot of what I talk about is what I've learned myself and from what I've gathered from other beekeepers, and not really like info, but more of their locations, kind of what goes on in their area. That's one good thing that comes out of having a chat with somebody else. Sometimes I do that. I haven't done that in a while. I do want to do it, but that is a very good thing that comes out of it, is learning other folks' area, their flows, and then you can actually properly talk about it. And that can also just be from people talking about it in the chat. It kind of gives me an idea of what goes on in their area, so I can kind of talk a little bit more good on it, so I don't, mess any of the info up, I'm down here in southeastern Alabama, right now, right outside of Troy. And, we have a lot of folks around here. I always gather info from them as well, what's going on in their area. And see what was Jessica saying. Hey, Keith, have you pulled your 5th round of honey yet? I always see Keith, and he's always harvesting honey. It's unbelievable. Well, you know what? I've always mentioned, and I'm sure people always tell him that they wish they had his flow. I sure do wish. I custom built a super for my 12 frames land hive. I sometimes harvest a full frame on the outside when mostly capped. Hey, I mean, whenever you have different type of equipment, lands or anything else, it could be a warrior hive. You can always customize equipment. That's one thing. That's one good thing if you know how to build stuff. And again, I've mentioned it before that I build my own equipment, so I sometimes will customize certain things that I like better. And one thing that I do that on most boxes that most people don't do is rabbit joints whenever I'm building boxes, and most boxes have finger joints, and those are fine. But I personally like rabbit joints. The main thing that I will know the difference between both would be finger joints can be easier to assemble, especially for somebody who's somebody who doesn't know really how to build or even things up or anything like that. Make it easier to assemble. A finger joint box would be so much more easier. But if you know how to clamp things together, whatever, the rabbit joints are still good as well. Good thing about the rabbit joints is it doesn't expose as much grain as finger joints. You only had the side of both boxes that is exposed, where on the finger joints you'll have those every single finger on each side would be exposed. And I've noticed on those boxes, I think 2 of them so far from maybe a couple years ago, they are starting to rot due to those end grains being exposed in that area where the finger joints are. So I think that may be the main thing that I would say is the difference between both joints if you're building boxes. I see Jacob saying, I'm beginning to think Keith is using videos from past years. Not yet, waiting for the mimosa to fade away, and then I will. Mimosa is still blooming here as well. We also still have tallow blooming. And that's about it. So, I guess that's about it of updates around here. I've really haven't been doing much out in the bee garden. It's just I've been leaving them alone as much as possible. Treatments are on all the colonies, and the thing about Roxanne that you can do, and what I've done with a lot of them, is if there is a double deep, you put 4 to 3 in a 10 frame box in the bottom, but you don't put. You could put 2 in the top box, but you don't have to, especially if you're adding supers, because what you want is a box in between a super and in the box with the Roxanne strips, and that's just kind of what the label says, and that's kind of what I've followed. So it says that you can still put supers on, harvest those supers, will be completely fine. You just need a box in between. I do like that about it, because a lot of treatments, they highly suggest that you don't, use put on supers during the time. But the good thing about this treatment is you can, but that one exception. You do need to have that box in between. So I have a lot of hives that are double deeps. So what I'll do is put the super on top and then the strips in the bottom. But if y'all will, make sure y'all smash the thumbs up button if you haven't already. I appreciate y'all when y'all do that. Chris Ray saying, where is this guy located in the U.S.? You talking about me, or are you talking about somebody else? I'm down here in southeastern Alabama, right outside of the small town of Troy. And actually, Troy's in the College World Series as well. So I mean, they're doing pretty good. I've been keeping up with them, and I do keep up with sports. I'm an Alabama fan, but they got swept in the series. Just gotta keep rooting for Troy now. Hopefully they'll keep winning. But anyway, I do want to talk about that I've been mentioning a lot that I was going to do a 3,000 subscriber giveaway whenever I reach it, and I'm still going to do that. And the main reason why I wanted to do it whenever I reach 3,000, it might seem kind of an odd number to do a giveaway for, but I just figured that I've had a lot of support and a lot of people who donate and like and view, and I couldn't be here without you guys, so I'm just wanted to kind of give back to those people and do small giveaway. So I'm only, what is it, 78 subscribers away. We've grown pretty quick. So I'm gonna do that. Yeah, they're getting ready to play us. So you're in West Virginia, is that right? That's what I saw. I think West Virginia is gonna be. I know they lost against North Carolina, so it'll be North Carolina and somebody else. But I know it'll be West Virginia and Troy, I believe. Yes. Oh, okay, cool. And I mean, I guess we'll come back next week on my live stream. We'll see who wins. Hey, Philip. RTX Honeybees, good to see you. On Tuesday, yep, tomorrow. I got to look at the time. Probably be either going to be at afternoon or at night. Chris says he's in Oregon. Oh, wow. So you're up there in the West Coast. All right. Cut the bottom of the can about inches tall. Make the top of the can about the same. Use it to cap the bottom and use the tab on the top to hold the wick up. Get you. If you have any more questions, feel free to put them in the chat because we only got about 9 more minutes of the chats and then we'll kind of go ahead and get going. Already went through the topic, got done with that pretty quick, I would say. Go back. I'm going to real quick while people are still. Okay, I see Russell. I apologize I missed you in there, but thanks for checking in, Russell. Good to see you. Dennis, you can hear the mosquitoes 5 feet away now. Yep, in with this muggy weather, I mean they're just terrible. Luckily, outside when we walk outside our house, it's not been that bad. It's just whenever you get into swampy areas, whether it be by the by water, the river or a lake, that's whenever they'll eat you up down there. It's just unbelievable around the water. See, Jacob saying, Rick, you know what I hate about moving swarms at sunset? It's always during the chats. I missed Tim and Hannah's on Sunday because I was moving a swarm. Yep, that it's always a good idea to move swarms, and I did that last year, moving a swarm at sunset. Now, luckily, I did it a little bit later, so there wasn't any chats going on at the time. I don't think. Maybe there was, but that is one bad thing about it. But it's a better than doing it during the day, though. Doing it at night or at sunset. Chris says, how many years have you been keeping bees? I've been keeping bees about 10 years. I started in 2016. That was whenever I was, let's see here, 7 years old, maybe 6 years old, somewhere around there. I was pretty young when I did it. So, the thing about how long I've been keeping bees, a lot of people say I've got a lot of experience since I've kept bees for 10 years. But honestly, I would say I would kind of consider it more of maybe 4 years of experience because the earlier years I was very young, so I really wasn't able to understand that well of things until a couple years ago, or in 2020, 2021, when I was a little older. I could understand more about the timing and different things, experience. But so yeah, I would say I have more about 4 years of experience, but I've been keeping bees 10 years. Now those earlier years, when I didn't know what I was doing at all, I really didn't. I mean, back then I made a split like in November, and that's something that's just a newbie would do. But that is something that you can learn from, making your own mistakes. A lot of times I would just every year would lose bees, have to buy more bees. It seemed like that was the case for multiple years. Like every year, lose half my hives, maybe even more, 75% of the colonies. I would maybe have a colony, 3, 2, or 1, and next year buy more bees, same process over and over again. It was like Groundhog Day every year, same thing. Just kind of got frustrating, but more of the last year I was, losing colonies almost every year was in 2023. I went into winter with about 6, and I only came out with 1 colony. And that one colony, it was very frustrating, and I was frustrated about that, but was able to learn from my experiences, and since then haven't lost as many colonies. Now I've still lost a colony or two. That winter after I got more bees in 2024, and then ever since then I haven't lost as many colonies and have been a much better beekeeper than earlier on. But those earlier years, whether you're very young or older, are very valuable because you'll learn a lot of different lessons that you wouldn't be able to learn if you didn't keep bees hands on. You could watch YouTube videos about people telling you, okay, you're gonna have winter, you're gonna have all this different stuff. This is how you're gonna effectively keep your bees alive through winter. What you have to do, here's a checklist. You could follow every single thing a beekeeper tells you, and you could still lose your colony. I mean, you still could. So that's the thing about it. So to effectively overwinter your colonies, get them through the dearth and other things. It takes experience. Jessica, good night, everyone. Thanks for joining in, Jessica. Appreciate you joining in tonight. Do you have a problem with chalk brood where you're at since it's wet? I've never had a problem with chalk brood, actually. Now, again, since it's wet, a little bit more muggy down here, I am surprised I haven't had an issue. Now, right when I'm saying that, I could have an issue. I'm always looking out for any issues, whether it be chalk brood, foul brood, or, viruses from mites. I'm always on the lookout. Make sure to keep them healthy, but I haven't had any problems with chalk brood. Oh, Keith says, Grayson, are you still playing your guitar? You should be. I actually played it right before the live stream, before we started, about 30 minutes before. So yeah, but I still play. Hobby. I do beekeeping more than guitar, I will say, but it's kind of a sad thing for me. It's always fun. You know what? Dennis and Keith, if you're talking about tulip poplar, lately, the main thing I've been focusing on right now has been focusing on researching about different trees and flowers. Tulip poplar, tallow trees, privet. I've just been kind of keeping up, trying to research as much as possible, get an idea of what blooms down here and what doesn't, what does well down here, what doesn't. And I did research, and it seems like, with all the research I've done, that we do have tubular poplar down here. I've not seen any. I have been on the lookout for it. It's probably about over, Keith. Wouldn't you think it's probably about over? But next year I'll be on the lookout for it. Like Keith said, I do have it down here. Dennis says, I planted a few even if I want to be around to get anything off of them, but my nephew will if he stays in the bees. Yeah, probably will take him a little bit to get ready to produce blooms. Jacob says, what are you doing for Independence Day this year? I don't know. We haven't really decided what we're going to do. Usually we'll go to the river or whatever and hang out around there, but not sure about this year. Probably so, though. 4th of July. Probably going to extract around that time, though. I will say that. I'm planning to, hopefully, it probably won't be a whole lot, but maybe it'll be a little bit. Probably going to try to extract in early July, maybe second weekend of July. I wonder if you have heard of the new mite that is in our hives that is oblong and not round. I haven't heard of it. What's the name of that mic, Chris? Do you know the name of it? If so, I'll have to do some research, look up and see what that's about. Haven't heard of it though. Well, anyway, we've been kind of going on for a little bit. I appreciate y'all so much for watching tonight. Good topic, kind of talk about honey production, what limits it, and right now am experiencing a lot of things that is limiting my honey production. And trying to work around that, of course. But anyway, on y'all's way out, make sure y'all smash that thumbs up button. Subscribe to the channel if you are new here. And I'll probably do my live stream again next week as well. But anyway, thank you so much for watching. I couldn't be here without you guys, and but I was gonna mention before we leave that lately I've not been uploading that many videos. I'm sure y'all have noticed, but I'm gonna try to upload a little bit more, kind of give some updates of what's going on. But just haven't been that consistent, this year. Last year, I was trying to upload every Saturday, and it did well. It was a good little thing that I had going, but fortunately, kind of got out of that. But maybe we'll kind of get back on track. But anyway, thank you so much for watching, and we'll catch you next time. Good night, everyone. Thank you.